For the second year in a row, we start off the FLW Pro Circuit season at Sam Rayburn Reservoir in southeast Texas. This is a legendary fishery that all bass fishermen know about. It holds a lot of big fish, and it is massive. It's over 114,000 surface acres, and so that means that there is a lot of different water to fish. There's a lot of different cover in this lake, everything from bushes, cypress trees, to all types of grasses, and also offshore fishing as well. So if you're an offshore guy, you can find some great offshore structure, and if you're a shallow guy, you can find something to fish up shallow and utilize power fishing tactics. So there's a wide variety of things to do. And going into practice, I knew that I wanted to focus on fishing those drains, those areas in the backs of creeks and pockets that they call drains down in Texas, but they're essentially little creek channels, and that's where the fish are going to group up during the spring, waiting to go up and spawn. And lipless crankbaits, red lipless crankbaits, are standard fare on Sam Rayburn. In fact, they got a color called Rayburn Red that is really well known, so I caught some fish on that, as well as fishing chatterbaits in those drains. And so both of those techniques were kind of my primaries for finding fish in drains, but I also employed some deeper water techniques. I utilized a Carolina rig on some offshore spots, and I ended up finding one offshore spot that I felt had multiple fish on it. But by the end of practice, I really had a tough time figuring out what exactly I was going to do during the tournament. It was really spotty. I was catching generally smaller fish, and just really didn't have a good solid pattern going. So really it was up in the air as far as what I was going to do during the event. Day one started out with cloudy frontal conditions. There was a little bit of wind, but overall it was an overcast day. And I decided to start on my Carolina rig spot. It was essentially a hump in front of a large spawning area, and it was just textbook. It was a great pre-spawn area. I thought it was my best shot at catching a few keepers to get my day started, and I ended up catching 3 keepers very, very quickly, and even ended up catching a 4th that barely didn't measure, let him go, and the bite died after about 45 minutes of that. So ended up pulling up the motor guide and started running a completely different pattern. Started running my drain pattern in small creek arms, and really the thing that I was looking for was submerged grass. If it had a little bit of coontail or hydrilla, I would use the Panoptix Live Scope to kind of check out the areas and look for that submerged grass. And ended up right off the bat throwing the jackhammer chatterbait, 1/2 ounce bruised green pumpkin with a razor shad strailer, and started working it slowly through those areas, and very quickly ended up hooking into a fish that made a big difference overall on the day. Ended up hooking into a 3.5 or maybe even 3 3/4 pounder. That made a huge difference. That started to give me a lot more momentum in the day. And very soon after that fish, I ended up picking up the lipless crankbait and hooked into a fish that ended up being my biggest of the day.
Good. No, you're not coming off. You're not coming off. I got you. I got you in the net, boy. That's what I'm talking about. That is a good fish. It wasn't coming off. It's Hayabusa treble hooks, man. They slice, they dice, they catch biggins.
After catching that 4.5 pounder, I really didn't have any other luck, didn't catch any more fish, and had to make the long run back to the weigh-in. And it was actually pretty rough that day. The wind had picked up, it was coming out of the northwest, which is a pretty bad direction on Sam Rayburn. It goes right down the chute and creates some big waves. But fortunately, my Nitro Z20 rides great in rough water, and I just took it slow, zigzagged, run the troughs of the waves, and made it back in good time and in good condition. However, one thing I need to note at this point is that earlier in the day, I did in fact hit an underwater object that I believe was a submerged tree. Now, I trimmed up the engine and there was no visible sign of damage to the engine. However, when I put the boat on the trailer in the afternoon, I looked under the boat and realized that I had some fiberglass damage. Now, one thing about fiberglass damage is you never want to continue on fishing out of a boat with fiberglass damage because you can run the risk of it getting worse. And so I decided after day one that I needed to find a loaner boat for safety purposes. And fortunately, I was able to find a loaner boat. My good friend and fellow FLW Pro Circuit angler, Chris Brasher, decided to loan me his 2019 boat, and that's what I ended up running for the next 2 days. Day two posed a new set of challenges. First off, the weather had completely changed. Now we've got bluebird skies, a lot of wind, and it was very, very cold. So not exactly perfect conditions for catching Florida strain pre-spawn largemouth. However, the real big challenge that this day was that I went to go pick up the loaner boat. Again, very thankful for Chris Brasher to allow me to use his old boat, and ended up picking it up, got back to my campsite around 2 a.m. Friday morning, and so I was running on fumes. I had very little sleep, and ended up getting to the launch and found out that the crank and battery was dead. Of course, this is nobody's fault. This actually happens quite often, and it was just very unfortunate, but I couldn't use the big engine. I couldn't even jump start the crank and battery that morning. I had a lot of help from a lot of people, but just couldn't do it. So I was relegated to fishing off of the trolling motor around the ramp that day. So I went out, and I was very fortunate. I had my Navionics card in the Lowrance unit on the bow that I ended up installing, and I saw this underwater point that kind of jutted out from the riprap on the dam, and it looked perfect for a Carolina rig. Had hard bottom on the top, and also was very shallow on the top, but dropped off into very deep water on either side. So I was able to put my nose down and just fish, and I quickly caught my first fish, caught my second fish, caught my third. There was a little bit of lull between the third and fourth, but caught my fourth fish, and then finally at about around 11 o'clock ended up catching my fifth fish.
Overcoming the odds. 5 pounder in the boat. Ramp's right there. You know what? It's never too bad to catch fish.
At that point, my batteries were about toast as far as the trolling motor batteries. I had been holding steady in a very harsh wind, and so I decided to go in early. I got back to the ramp and checked in at around 11:30 and had 14 pounds, 4 ounces on the day.
So yesterday I fished this spot because I only had a trolling motor, and there's a fish. There we go. Number one. Yeah, so this is just a big, long point. Number one, third day. Not a bad one, about a 2 1/4. So yesterday I was kind of handicapped. As you can see, I'm in a borrowed boat, and wasn't able to use the big engine, unfortunately, because of battery issues. But I had to use the trolling motor, and we're within eyesight of the ramp right here, and this, I saw on the Navionics card, got this long, shallow point that juts out from the dam here, and boy, it is a great little Carolina rig spot. It tops out pretty shallow, and it's just the perfect spot to catch, you know, some release fish, to be honest with you. It's exactly what I'm fishing for. And there seems to be some good quality here. Just dragging a little creature bait, 3/4 ounce Fitzgerald weight. And I'm using a 7.3 heavy Versus Series rod. And I've got a 15-pound test Red Label Seagar fluorocarbon leader, and it's been stout.
I sent that picture. It looked like everything was working to my phone, and it hadn't come in yet. I don't know if it's in my phone.
Well, we'll just have to send this one then. Whoa!
That one's going to work. Yeah.
There he is. I knew I'd catch one right there. Little guy. Too short. Well, he might go. We'll see. And those Hayabusa treble hooks, real sticky. Better believe he touches. Number 3.
Put that in your cold box.
Number 3, yeah. Number 3's got to go. All right. There's a fish. That's a good one. That's the size we want. Yep. That's a good one. Yep. Come on this side. Come on this side, girl. There we go. Fish number 5. Limit by 8:30. It'll be fun to catch a few on a spinning rod. I'm pretty sure I can catch a bunch doing this. Just whether or not I can catch the size I'm looking for. There he is. That's a better one. On the Z-Man finesse worms. Okay. All right. Yep, 3-pounder. Finesse worms right there, baby. Oh man, it was not coming off.
Yeah, I got sun right now.
I ended up catching a bunch of fish on the Carolina rig, as well as one fish on a crankbait, and then I upgraded with the Z-Man finesse worms. For some reason, Texas bass love a shaky head, and that Z-Man finesse worms really does a good job at raising up off the bottom and having a nice natural presentation. So I was able to upgrade several times with that bait, but by the afternoon, the bite was completely dead. The fish just repositioned. I could see him on the graph, suspended it out in deep water. And in fact, I ended up catching several fish out of real deep water, suspended over 55 and 60 foot of water, and even caught a couple right off the bottom in 55 feet of water, which I didn't expect. And I caught all those deep suspended fish on a drop shot with a Z-Man trick shots in green pumpkin goby color, but they didn't help. They were smaller fish on average, and what really surprised me is that they were all largemouth, which was really surprising because it really looked like great spotted bass territory, which Sam Rayburn has a lot of little spotted bass. But overall, the afternoon didn't produce anything that helped, and it was time to head to weigh-in.
See you, Sonar. You are the man. Yesterday, 14 pounds and 4 ounces to take the lead. He needs 12 pounds, 8 ounces. 12-8. He'll get the lead from John Cox. He's got a 5 bass limit today, worth 13 pounds, 7 ounces. That's got you in the lead, 41 pounds, 3 ounces. Let's see your 2 best bass. Miles Berghoff puts a charge into this weigh-in early. If you watched FLW Live and you watched our live leaderboard, you saw him move up all day long. 2 Sam Rayburn beauties to get this thing up.
All right, so that wraps up my FLW Pro Circuit event on Sam Rayburn, the very first FLW Pro Circuit event, and this is gonna go down in history as one of the most challenging tournaments that I've ever had. But the great thing about this event is the fact that I overcame that adversity and ended up having a good 18th place finish. That's a finish that anybody can be proud of. It's a great way to start the season, and for it to happen on a week that I had a lot of really, really big challenges is very special. I mean, I'm gonna look back at this event and I'm gonna be able to say I grew as a competitor, I grew as a fisherman, and as a person at this event. And it's really increased my confidence and my resolve. So I'm gonna carry that on to the next event, and I really look forward to it. So I really hope you like this video. If you did like this video, of course, hit that like button. And I also wanna hear your feedback. So leave a comment below and subscribe to me. We're going to be doing these videos throughout this year as I fish these Pro Circuit events, and the very next one is on the Harris Chain of Lakes down in Florida. It's going to be another really exciting event. It's probably the one I'm looking forward to the most because number one, it's flip-flop and short weather, and I really like Florida fishing. I lived down there for many years, so it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you guys for watching. Of course, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys out on the water.